Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first episode of PTV FC. My name is Jimmy Bliss, and I'm joined by a great duo of analysts, Ryan Johnston and Louie Pasculli. Guys, how are you two doing today?
I'm doing great, Jimmy. Thank you for asking. Happy to start off this show, and hopefully we can get underway with no problems and everything will be good. It's going to be fun.
I'm doing really well too. I'm really excited for this show. I love soccer and I'm really excited to talk about it with you guys.
Yeah, the beautiful game is certainly a great game to talk about. So let's just go straight into it. We have a great show lined up today. So we're going to start with the sacking of Frank Lampard. So former Chelsea legend Frank Lampard was fired from Chelsea on Monday morning after Chelsea lost 5 of their last 9 games in the Premier League, with just one win coming against 18th place Fulham in that stretch. Chelsea currently sit in 8th place in the Premier League and have appointed former PSG manager Thomas Tuchel as their manager. So what do you make of this news? Ryan, I'll start with you.
I honestly think it's a great move by Chelsea. I think they really needed a switch up at the manager position. I mean, you mentioned they barely beat Fulham. They beat them 1-0. They drew to Wolves, who are in 13th right now, and they lost to Man City and Leicester, who granted are some of the best teams in the Premier League. But they lost to Arsenal in late December, and at that point they were like 15th in the league. And I'm an Arsenal fan. Like, they should not have lost to us. I don't know what was going on right there. And he just hasn't done a great job making use of his new signings, like Timo Werner only has 4 goals in his 19 matches. Kai Havertz has looked really, really out of place in the Premier League. He's really struggled to adjust. He only has 1 goal in his first 17. Hakim Ziyech only has 1 goal in his first 11 matches. It just didn't seem to be working out. Despite having a good start to the season, they were in 4th for a long time. I think they needed to change. And, you know, Tuchel, I'm not sure exactly how you pronounce it, but he's a great manager. I honestly don't understand why PSG fired him, because he took them to the finals of the Champions League just last season, and they fired him for it. I think it's a great pickup, and I'm really excited to see what Chelsea can do.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there, Ryan. I'm perfectly fine with Frank Lampard getting sacked. I mean, Chelsea is 8th. It's not like they're going to get relegated, but I still think that he had a low winning percentage, which he did. Chelsea is a winning football club, and they have a lot of young talent, and they do not want to waste that. That's why I like the signing of Thomas, because as a Borussia Dortmund fan, he used to manage Borussia Dortmund. And to me, it's kind of the same team. I mean, Borussia Dortmund usually has a lot of good young players surrounded by some veterans, which can be comparable to Chelsea. So I'm perfectly fine with Frank Lampard getting sacked in this situation.
Yeah, so I just think that this is so typical Chelsea. I mean, Chelsea have had 11 managers in the past 10 years. They have over 1 manager per year in the Premier League. So every time they go through a little bit of a dip in form, they blame the manager and immediately fire him. I mean, yes, they did go through a bad run of games over the past month plus. So that's why Chelsea did fire Frank Lampard this time. But it's just so typical Chelsea not to ride it out like Arsenal's riding it out with Mikel Arteta, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. He overcame what he had to with Manchester United earlier in the season. So Chelsea's just so impatient. I just think this is so typical Chelsea to fire Frank Lampard after this run of games. And honestly, the appointment of Thomas Tuchel, it's a little bit strange because he gives youth a chance, which is exactly what Frank Lampard did. In Borussia Dortmund, he gave Christian Pulisic, Ousmane Dembele, and Julian Weigl a lot of playtime there at Dortmund when they were all 21 years old or less during his seasons. At PSG, he gave a lot of time to Presnel Kimpembe, Thilo Kehrer, and Abdou Diallo at PSG. They all played at least 20 games this past season under Tuchel. But oftentimes, the reason why he was fired at PSG was he could not win the big game in charge. So in Champions League, he has choked away a few leads. He hasn't been up to par, up to what PSG wanted. They lost to Manchester United in 2018, which is a game they should never have lost. They were up 3-1. Then they collapsed completely against Manchester United. Then they also, against Atalanta this year, they were in hot water for most of that game until they finally pulled it out. In the 86th minute they scored, and then they scored the game winner in the 92nd to go on and win. They just don't seem, he can't win the big game is what it looks like right now. So for Chelsea's sake, hopefully he can turn it around and he can turn into a good manager and be there for a good amount of time. because the last time that a manager was there for a long time at Chelsea was Jose Mourinho, and we all know how the special one went at Chelsea. But for Chelsea's sake, hopefully Thomas Tuchel is the one to have Chelsea get into the top four once again, because people are forgetting just last year they were in the top four with Frank Lampard, with that transfer ban, with the sale of Eden Hazard. So it's not like he was a bad manager. He was just going through a bad run of form. I personally would have waited it out and waited another month before I would have gotten rid of him. But I do understand the firing of Frank Lampard at this stage. But moving on, Manchester United and Liverpool squared off twice last week, splitting the points in a 0-0 draw at Anfield in the Premier League, and the Red Devils taking down the Reds in Old Trafford by a score of 3-2 in the FA Cup. So, what were your reactions to both of these matches? Louie, I'll go to you first.
So unfortunately, I didn't get to watch either of these games because I was very busy last week, but watching the highlights was so fun to me. I'll start with the first game. The first game was like a chess match, right? It was a 0-0 draw. That's how it finished. Neither team was able to come away with 3 points, but there were chances from both sides. There were good saves from both sides. And even Paul Pogba had a chance to win it for Manchester United right at the end there, but he was unable to do so. So that was interesting to me to see how evenly matched these sides were, because I understand that Man United is first in the table and they're leading the Premier League right now. But I'd say 3 to 4 months ago, if you said Man United is going to tie with Liverpool, people thought you were crazy. So it was really a good showing for Man U in league play. And then the next game, they won. They came back. They beat Liverpool in the FA Cup. The final was 3-2. That was another fun game to watch the highlights of. I don't think I could say any more good things about Bruno Fernandes and how well he's playing. He had a goal and an assist in that game. He had the free kick to finish the game, which put Man United ahead, which then won the game. But Rashford was the one who had a goal and an assist in that game, and he is also another player who's playing very, very well at the moment. So 2 great games for Manchester United. A bit of concern for Liverpool if I'm them and Jurgen Klopp, but Liverpool's a good team. I think they'll find a way to stiffen it out.
Yeah, I really agree with what you said about Bruno Fernandes and Marcus Rashford. They are the real deal. They've been killing it all season, especially Bruno Fernandes. He really looks like the best midfielder in the world right now. I'm not saying he is or he's not, but he really looks like it. As for Liverpool, I think it was more of a wake-up call for them. They hit kind of a poor run of form. They were drawing a lot of matches that they shouldn't have been, and they fell quite a bit in the table. And I think losing to Manchester United in that FA Cup round was kind of they're rivals. They're rivals. They're some of the biggest rivals in football. And I think it was really a wake-up call for them as they came out and slaughtered Tottenham 3-1. And I think that moving forward, we should see a more convincing Liverpool squad. I mean, they literally lost to Burnley earlier this season, and they're in 15th in this run of form that they've had. They lost to Burnley. So hopefully this win against Tottenham will turn them around a little bit. I know they're playing West Ham this weekend, which could be a good match because they're really close in the table. But yeah, that's my biggest takeaway. I think that this was a wake-up call for Liverpool.
Yeah, so as a Manchester United fan myself, I could not be happier with these 2 games. I mean, if we won at Anfield, that's the only way that I would have been a happier fan. But Liverpool has been undefeated at home in the league since early 2017 before losing to Burnley earlier this week. So going there, you see these Man City teams, you see these Tottenham teams, these Chelsea teams. All of these teams go to Anfield with the ambitions of taking home the 3 points, and none of them have before Burnley did earlier in the week. So both of these games were huge for Manchester United. The win was even nicer, obviously, because we beat our hated rivals in Liverpool. It's the longest standing rivalry in the Premier League itself. So that is always great. And the second game, the win, the 3-2 win that Manchester United had over Liverpool, I showed that Man U can go toe-to-toe with Liverpool without having to sit back and absorb the pressure. We've seen this with Jose Mourinho prior to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer being there at Manchester United, and that most of the big games, Manchester United would kind of sit back and try to break on the counter. They would try to counterattack, and that's how they would win the game. They would just score a quick goal off the break and then just sit back and defend for another 88 minutes. But in that game, they really went forward. They went down 1-0 pretty early with Mohamed Salah's strike, so they kind of had to change up their game plan a little bit. They had to go more attacking, and Then they went behind again through another Mohamed Salah strike after Mason Greenwood scored. Then Rashford equalized until Bruno Fernandes scored the game winner with the free kick late in the second half. So I think that these two games were enormous for Manchester United. Of course, Manchester United did lose later in the week, but we'll get to that in a moment. So I do think that this was huge for Manchester United, and that Liverpool needs to, just like Ryan said, they need to wake up a little bit, because right now they're sitting 6 points back in the league, which is something unheard of for a team like Liverpool. So moving on, sticking with the topic of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, he has been under tremendous pressure from the media since taking over as the manager of Manchester United. I'm going to name a few managers in the Premier League, and you tell me who's the better manager between Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and the manager I'm about to name. So the first manager we are going to compare Ole Gunnar Solskjaer to is Brendan Rodgers of Leicester. So Louie, my question for you is: if you had one game to win, who would you want to manage your side, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer or Brendan Rodgers?
Now, this is a hard question that you posed to me. Jimmy, I don't know if you're going to like my answer, but right now, I want Brendan Rodgers because Liverpool is third, if I'm not mistaken. They're third in the Premier League. His boys are playing good. He's got a good side. I mean, and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has done a great job with Manchester United. Do not get me wrong. But one game, it's hard. It's hard. But I think I would have to take Brendan Rodgers.
Yeah, I'm actually going to have to agree. See, one game that makes it a little tougher because it's a lot into who you're playing and the tactics of each manager. But in the long run, I'd say I've got Brendan Rodgers by just a little bit, because I think he can do pretty similar. He can get similar results to Ole, but he spends a lot less money doing so. I mean, you've seen how much money Ole has spent in the past couple of summers. He spent 95 million on Harry Maguire, and he spent 60 million on Aaron Wan-Bissaka and a couple other players that same summer. And even this past summer, which was a little bit of a lower spending summer for Manchester United, they still spent upwards of $100 million. And Brendan Rodgers, they're in similar spots in the Premier League, and he spent half as much over that same time period. So just in terms of a financial standpoint, I think you've really got to give Brendan Rodgers a lot of credit for what he's been able to do with, I don't know if I want to say lesser players, but less expensive players.
Yeah, so it's unanimous between the three of us. I would definitely say Brendan Rodgers is the better manager, and I'm willing to say that he's the better manager by a mile. He has a far inferior squad to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, just like what you mentioned to before, Ryan, with the less expensive players, so they should be of lesser quality. And last season, Leicester was in top four for nearly the entire season before they finished in fifth place after losing to Manchester United on the final day of the season. Right now, they are third on the Premier League table and 1 point back of Manchester United and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. And I mean, if you look at the team that Brendan Rodgers has right now, he lost his best player just last season in Harry Maguire, who got sold to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's side in Manchester United. But they didn't blink at all. They didn't miss a beat. They just brought in Soyuncu, the Turkish center back, and he filled in perfectly for Harry Maguire. And this season, his best player has been Jamie Vardy, who we all love Jamie Vardy, but he's like 33 years old at this point, and he's not quite the player that he used to be. They have James Maddison, who's turned into a superstar. He's angling for a big move pretty soon. Yuri Tielemans, same deal. They also lost Ben Chilwell, but they're still on the table with all these losses and potential losses that they are about to endure. So moving on, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer against the man that he was built in to replace, Jose Mourinho. Ryan, who do you think is the better manager between those two?
You know, I've got to go with the special one, Jose Mourinho. He is literally one of the greatest managers of all time. I just don't think you can ignore his accolades. They're just too shiny to look away from. He wins wherever he goes. And I mean, Tottenham started out the season, like they were looking serious to start out the season. They were beating everybody. They've had a little bit of a dip in form, which is to be expected because it's a long season. But right now, it is closer. But just in the long run, I think Mourinho just has so many accomplishments across the world of football that you can't ignore it.
Yeah, I agree with you right there, Ryan. I mean, it's really hard to bet against Jose Mourinho. Like you said, he's one of the best managers to grace the pitch. And honestly, if he can get Tottenham to play like you said they had played in the beginning of the season, then I think for sure I'd go with Jose Mourinho.
So I'm actually going to play devil's advocate here, and I think Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is the better manager here. Now, I'm not just saying this because I'm a Manchester United fan, but I truly believe that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer gets the most out of his players, and Jose Mourinho doesn't exactly do that. I feel like everywhere Jose Mourinho goes, he tries to pick a fight with the best player on the team to kind of show that he's the alpha male. We saw this with Real Madrid with Cristiano Ronaldo. He got into so many fights with Cristiano Ronaldo. With Chelsea, he would barely play Eden Hazard, who was one of the best players in Premier League history. With Manchester United, it was Paul Pogba. He did not get along with Paul Pogba. He kind of has a big ego. So does Paul Pogba. So does Cristiano Ronaldo. But still, these are your best players on the team. You need to keep them in check. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, you never see anything bust up out of him. He's a players manager for sure. I just think he gets more out of his players because if you look at Manchester United of 2 years ago when Jose Mourinho was in charge just before he got sacked, you still had the majority of these players. You still had Marcus Rashford, but he was nowhere near how good he's performing right now under this system. Paul Pogba was doing absolutely nothing under Jose Mourinho, but now under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, who was transformed into a much better player. And David De Gea, same deal. He was struggling a little bit under Jose Mourinho, but now he's back to his best this season under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. I just think that if Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was the manager of Tottenham right now, they'd be better than sixth place because his style is definitely a lot better for this type of football that we see in 2021. You can't sit back and defend like Jose Mourinho wants to all season long. Although they did have a very good start to the season with Heung-min Son and Harry Kane all scoring so many goals. I just think that right now, if you were to give me a season of Jose Mourinho or Ole Gunnar Solskjaer managing the same exact team, I would rather take Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. But moving on to the last manager we are going to compare Ole Gunnar Solskjaer to is Ryan's favorite manager, Mikel Arteta. So if you had to pick between Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and Mikel Arteta, who would be your manager of choice? And we'll start with you, Louie.
Okay, you already said that it's Ryan's favorite manager, so I'm going to keep this quick. I think I would take Ole Gunnar Solskjaer just because Arsenal has been struggling recently. Like you said, Ryan, I think they're 15th in the table. Both good managers, but I think Gunnar Solskjaer is a little bit better as of right now. But Ryan, I'll give you the floor.
Look, it pains me to say this. It really does because I love Arsenal. And I want to see them succeed, and they've been doing really well recently. We were 15th. We were back up in 9th now after a good run of form. We've won like 5 out of our last 6 in the Premier League. But I've got to go with Ole because he's just winning. He's just winning. They're doing well. They've been doing well the whole season, and that is something that I cannot say about Arteta. And more than that, he's more tenured than Arteta. He knows his players better. He knows the team better. He knows the club better. It's just where Arteta is right now is where Ole was 2 seasons ago. He was struggling. They were considering firing him, and he got out of it and kept his job. And that's where Arteta is right now. He was in that spot where he was struggling, and he fought out of it, and he kept his job for the time being. And he's just in a different spot in his managerial career right now. So because of that, I'm going to have to take Ole. But it's close. I mean, Arteta could take him over in a couple of years. Who knows? Football is volatile.
Certainly is, Ryan, and it's unanimous once again. I'd go with Solskjaer over Arteta. Arteta is a pretty good manager, exactly just like you said, Ryan. He's just in a little bit earlier of a stage of his managerial career than Solskjaer was. Arteta, he learned under Pep Guardiola, so I'm sure that he's going to get a little bit of the Guardiola factor in him pretty shortly. But as of right now, he's still a little bit in Pep's shadow, and he's just trying to get out of it and try to progress well with Arsenal. It started out really well with Arsenal, but then it went downhill, and now it's starting to pick up once again. So I'm excited to see what the future of Arsenal is going to have, especially with the potential signing of Hassim Aouar, the center mid from Olympique Lyon. He looks like if he's going to come into Arsenal, he's going to transform that midfield and make it a lot easier of a job for Mikel Arteta, as Arsenal's been lacking a little bit of midfield, especially the creativity in the midfield recently. So we're going to move on to the last topic of this show. And guys, just going to keep it simple. Which game are you looking forward to most next week? And Ryan, we will start with you.
Well, I want to say West Ham versus Liverpool. I really do, because they're just so close in the table. But when I look at West Ham, they're beating up on lower table clubs. They haven't played anyone really good in a long time. Their best win in a while is against Everton, and that was on January 1st, the new year. But before that, you have to go back to like October before you can find a real quality win. So because of that, I think Liverpool is really gonna strut their stuff this game. They're gonna walk all over West Ham after their win against Tottenham. So I'm gonna go Arsenal versus Man U. I think this is a really critical time for Mikel Arteta's squad. They've really battled back. They were literally in the relegation battle, and now they're trying to make a push for top 6. This is really going to show what his squad is all about. If they can get this win, they're legit. They can legit make a top 6 spot after being in 15th earlier this season. But in the same side, this is a crucial win for Man U. They really need to get this win. If Man City wins this weekend, they'll be 4, and Man U loses, they'll be 4 points up on Man U with a game in hand. Not looking too hot for the title race right there. I think both teams really need to win this game. It's going to be a great match. I'm really excited for it.
So Ryan talked a little bit about the matchup that I was going to pick, and that's Liverpool versus West Ham. Liverpool did get a huge victory earlier this week, but West Ham just looks so good. And this game, I feel, is personal for West Ham. West Ham is currently 5th in the league. You know who's 4th in the league? Liverpool. A win for West Ham would have them swap places, and then West Ham would be 4th. I think West Ham is going to come out firing. In my opinion, it's going to be a 2-2 draw, but West Ham does have potential to win this game. I'm really excited for it. That's my game of the week.
Very, very good matchups, the two of you brought up, but I'm going to go a little bit against the grain, and I'm going to pick Sunday's Chelsea versus Burnley matchup, actually. So it will be Chelsea's second matchup under Thomas Tuchel after their 0-0 draw to Wolves. They played pretty well in that game, and they were unlucky not to get the win. So I'm excited to see what Tuchel can do. His attacking sides are usually very exciting. We saw with Dortmund, he was very exciting. With PSG, with Mbappe, Neymar, Di Maria, Icardi, that was a very exciting lineup. Now that he'll have Timo Werner and Kai Havertz, you could have Hakim Ziyech as well, Christian Pulisic. That is going to be a fun team to watch. And Burnley, they defeated Aston Villa and Liverpool last week and are rounding into form right now. They defeated Liverpool, and that was Liverpool's first home loss since early 2017. Now imagine that. That's almost 4 full years of Liverpool not losing a home game. And Burnley just came in there and they had a masterclass of a tactical performance. And they went in there and they defeated Liverpool. Aston Villa as well, not an easy team to win against, especially with Jack Grealish, Ollie Watkins, all these guys that have started this year very, very well. They're at the top half of the table right now. So they were fighting off relegation to start the season off, but now they won 4 of their past 6 games Burnley have in the Premier League. So they are never, ever an easy out. They played Manchester United just a few weeks ago, and they played them really, really well until Paul Pogba's game-winning goal in the 70th minute. I just think that Burnley are a team you can't look past, especially against kind of a finesse team like Chelsea. Chelsea is all about trying to make the team look pretty ball. Everyone's dribbling around, whereas Thomas Tuchel has to come in here in his second game. He has to kind of tighten everything up, try to implement his tactics a little bit better. And we'll see if Wednesday on Sunday, if they can ultimately get the win and get his first managerial win in England itself. But that will do it for our inaugural episode of PTV FC. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you again next week for another preview. So once again, thank you so much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.
Stay safe.